And
I had the best, worst call ever.
yeah.
You know, and I was actually going home from work.
Oh, I remember this call.
And it's all over the news. It's you know.
Yeah.
But I see it happen. And I see the motorcycle wreck and everything and down into this ditch. And I'm like, I don't usually stop.
Yeah. I'm a plumber.
I don't have anything in my truck.
Right,
I'm not one of those people that carries like all my jump packs and everything. But I'm like, oh man, I got to stop. So I get down into this ditch and he's got a amputated leg, you know, and all kinds of stuff. I don't even have a knife. So the first,
what's wrong with you?
I know. the first police officer that shows up, I'm like, and I know him. I'm like, dude, I need your knife. So I'm cutting his pants and everything, and I take his belt and make a tourniquet with it. That does not work as well as the movie.
No.
Just so you guys know.
Right.
That's why we don't do it anymore.
But I'm just trying to come up with something.
Yeah.
So
Any
then
port in a storm.
a lady goes, hey, what else do you need? I'm like, do you have a rope? She's like, I have a bungee cord. I'm like, ooh, a bungee cord. So I got his belt, I got a bungee cord, we're doing the things, and then I hear the sirens coming. So I'm like, thank God I got some help.
Yeah.
Because he's about to stop breathing, like it's going bad. So I have a nickname that everybody calls me, and all I hear from that ambulance is, hey, you know, it said, hey, trash can, what do you need?
Yeah.
I'm like, I need an airway.
Yeah.
And it was one of my favorite medics in the world. You know, I'm mad at him because he left and went to Pittsburgh. But he gets down there and we do our thing, and one of the fire guys shows up, phenomenal medic. They get him over to the hospital. Well, I was stationed out of there at my job doing critical care, and I would go see him every day, and he was still alive.
Yeah.
Well, I'm down at the pharmacy getting my insulin, and one of the trauma guys comes up and says, hey, did you help this motorcycle guy the other day? I said, yeah. Well, his family's upstairs. I'm like, I don't know if I want to meet his family. But I go up, amazing people. So we get to spend some time together. But the next day, we just had to stop everything. 5 years later, I still Facebook, message. We still talk 3-4 times a year. Like, he was an organ donor. Like, he helped so many people. And I got to meet this family that is just, you know, amazing. And even though in the end he died, they were so thankful that what we did allowed them to get out here. He was a proud Army guy. He was actually a flight medic, you know, for the Army. But it allowed his family to get here and say goodbye. I knew there probably wasn't a huge hope, but you always hold out that hope.
Yeah.
But even in that darkest of times, I met the coolest family.
Yeah.
And they sent me patches that they made up from his military uniform and like all kinds of stuff. Like, I still talk to him to this day. Yeah. And I always remember that when I have those bad calls, that we made a difference to that family. Even though we couldn't save them, we made a difference to that family. Every doctor, every nurse, like, they put me and another nurse in his obituary, thanking us for everything that we did. You know, we made a difference to that entire family. And that's what we're here to do. Yeah. Like, you probably see, I don't know how many patients a day, but somebody remembers that you took that 10 minutes out of your day just to maybe not even talk about medical stuff, but just to acknowledge that that person is struggling. I still get, hey, is this guy still working? No, he's now a PA. You know, like, I still get people who say, is this guy still there? Is that guy still there? You know, because they remembered people. They remembered that in that crappy of a day, that one EMT or that one medic or nurse or somebody who took that extra 5 minutes they'll never forget it. So for every bad scene that I come up on, I remember all the people at Walmart who go, hey, you told me you started IVs on YouTube. Yep, that's how I learned them. That's what I tell everybody. You know, you make them laugh, you make them smile. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And they remember that.
They do.
And then that helps my brain process the bad things that we see. So I keep going every day.
Yeah,
You have to unpack those things every once in a while. There's so many highlights over my career that I can, you know, it's in my RAM, right? I can go back in this random access memory and I can go blink and I can pick this case out and go, oh yeah, that was awesome. Boink. Oh yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I'll never do that again. Boink. You know, and it's so important to be able to do that.
Well, I think you bring up a great point that we probably don't remember the faces of all our patients. Probably hardly any of them, unless it was something super dramatic or traumatic. But they remember you, and so I think that's a really good point to keep in mind. For good and bad. Yeah, for good and bad.
Yeah,
correct. If you were rude to them and mean to them and short with them, they're going to remember that. If you took the time to sit down and look them in the eyes, they're going to remember that. I think that's a really good point.
And the other piece of that is approaching each. I'll use the word and then make the point. Approaching each patient as a person, because they're not just a patient.
Yeah.
There's been a general movement away from, at least in the hospital, referring to each patient by their room number, right? Like, hey, go see room 13 or something like that, because. And rightfully so, because it is somewhat dehumanizing. Not somewhat, it is very dehumanizing. And part of that, I imagine, comes from that place of compartmentalization that we were just talking about putting things in locked boxes. Because separating yourself from the person, at least previously, was sort of a defense mechanism, a protective thing. And so if something bad happened, then it was theoretically going to affect you less. But I think that doing that removes us too much. And while in some cases, yes, you have to compartmentalize and not focus on the fact that, oh, wow, this bone is sticking through this person's leg. Oh, wow, they were just talking to me and now their heart's not beating. And there are certain things where you have to engage in that type 1 very reactive thinking. But acknowledging the humanity of our patients and understanding that there is a possibility that with just a few different circumstances, the roles could have easily been reversed. And we could be the one in that bed. We could be that room 22.
Truth. There was a movie, John Hurd played a doctor, and I wish I could remember the name of it, but he was just, you know, in the beginning of the movie, he was just an ass. He had the worst bedside manner. He was a great doctor, technically, and you know, materially, he was a lifesaver. I mean, really was, but he was just a jerk, and he became sick, and became a patient, and saw how people were treated, and he completely changed his outlook, and to the point where he was a professor in the med school. And as part of the med school, I think it was the third years, maybe, they might have been residents actually, but whatever, nonetheless, they were young doctors. And he would make them stay for a week in a mock, hospital as patients, and they had to get IVs, they had to get enemas, they had to get whatever procedures, all sorts of vile crap that goes on, to patients in the hospital necessarily, but still it's very dehumanizing. And he brought to the surface that these people are not just patients, they're not a number, they're actual people, and they have feelings, they have a psyche that you have to massage. And it made those doctors better doctors.
Well, it's a balance that we all have to find, because you don't want to be taking on every single patient's burden when you walk in the room. You don't need to be crying with every single patient.
Absolutely.
But maybe some of them you should.
You should, yeah.
Maybe you should take that time. And I try to do it intentionally because I've said this before. My natural bent will be to become a machine and just do the job and not try to relate with anybody, just get the things done and go home, clock out on time. So I have to be very intentional about making that human connection at least several times a day, because otherwise I'll get burned out. You have to see patients as humans in order to not burn out, but you can't do that to every single patient to not burn out.
Right.
I think it's that balance to find, and that's what we all struggle with every single day. None of us have that balance, I would argue, perfectly, but that's the struggle every day, I think, is to find that balance and work towards it.
We've seen the result of the patient, of the paramedic that takes on that kind of persona every patient. We've had several people. We've had way too many suicides here in this city, and a lot of it is because of that very thing. Like, I could name some names, Kim. I could name some names, Carrie, Tim, here in town, that and people that know those people here know exactly what I'm talking about. And one of those people took on the burden of sympathy for every patient. And she got a ton of really critical, bad patients, and she had a stretch of calls for a while there that were just awful, and it drove her away from this business. But it didn't. She never lost that, and she ended up killing herself. And that's the you got to be able to step back and not.
One of the worst shifts I ever had was that day.
Yeah.
Well, and the other aspect of that is we use this term burnout. And I don't like that term because it implies that there's something wrong with the individual.
Yeah.
There's been a movement lately to switch and use the phrase moral injury instead. Because we need to acknowledge that, yes, on some levels there is an individual responsibility to maintain a certain amount of resilience, but to do it in a healthy way. But the other piece of it is that the organizations that we work for and interact with need to take on more responsibility.
Big time.
To protect all of us from the things that we see and experience, both good and bad. But even the good stuff takes its toll.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because yes, you saved a life by doing XYZ intervention, but getting to that point required a lot of stress, required a lot of thinking, required a lot of personal risk, or whatever it may be. And the organizations are oftentimes, not always, and not every organization, but are oftentimes very quick to redirect the blame to the individual. This person didn't talk about what was happening.
Yeah.
No one, you hear time and again, well, no one had any idea.
Yeah.
It's because historically we have been trained to keep that to ourselves because it was seen as a mark of weakness.
Yep.
Feeling, caring, not caring it necessarily, but caring too much were seen as marks of weakness.
Yeah.
Talking about things was seen as not a cry for help, but a mark of inadequacy.
Yeah.
And we really, as a profession, as a field, as a group, need to change that mentality, because the organizations that employ us or that we volunteer for or whatever the relationship may be there need to take on a greater responsibility in ensuring the longevity and the the productivity of each of us. And that includes our mental health.
Yeah, I don't disagree. The main reason I've stuck with the term burnout instead of moral injury, because I've heard the arguments in favor of changing it to that, is I don't see anybody coming to save us. And I think burnout does put it on the individual, and the individual does not deserve all the blame by any means, but I don't see the organizations coming to save us anytime soon.
But what?
Not that we shouldn't work to change them, and I think you should be vocal, and we should work to change them when we can, but I think putting the responsibility on myself to fight the burnout is kind of all I've got, because in our organizations, to their credit, have some aspects that have been improving significantly. They have different programs and peer support, and they are moving slowly in the right direction. But I tend to stick with the word burnout because I think that it's something we've got to fix in ourselves while we're waiting for these organizations to do the right thing.
I think
Not that it's us to blame. You know, there's these circumstances are beyond us. We haven't decided to deal with we haven't decided to see the things that we see. We're in a very, very hard field. But that's kind of, I don't disagree with anything you've said. Cause is it Z-Dog? We watched a clip about Z-Dog making that argument about the moral injury versus burnout. Yeah. And I don't disagree with it. I just think that if we put too much emphasis on waiting for someone to save us, we're going to be very disappointed.
Well, and Kosh said something that really hit a nerve, because you said something about, you didn't see this in the person, talking about our peers didn't see it. Well, how do you think that makes that person's partner feel?
Yeah.
Why didn't I see it? Well, now you've got a whole other bag of worms,
And then you feel
And
guilty.
it perpetuates
that
itself.
you've opened up. Now that person feels guilty. Why didn't I see it? Well, maybe that person was pretty good at hiding.
Oh yeah, I mean, and not all of us are always the 100% best judge of character either.
Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that video? It's just a video clip of two friends. It shows them going to a football game, and they're sitting next to each other, and one of them's just really yee-haw, and the other guy's very stoic, and and it shows them several times, and it's always the same, and the guy looks obviously depressed, right? And the next thing you know, one of them doesn't show up, and it's the guy who's very vocal, very happy.
Yep, I did see this the other day.
He's the one that offed himself. It wasn't the guy that looked like he would have.
It's the kind of Robin Williams-ish.
Yeah.
The funniest, most happy-looking people in the world are the most tortured.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to talk to each other. Like, I guarantee you, if I put up on my Facebook right now, I need somebody, I'm going to the IHOP at this address.
Yeah.
People would show up.
Yeah, they would.
But can I go to my bosses and say, I'm struggling?
Yeah.
Can you help me? I think we feel a little more comfortable with each other because, I don't know, maybe just because we've been in the trenches together. But do our bosses understand that?
I think that they're beginning to.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily our bosses. I think it's more our bosses' bosses.
Yeah, that might be true.
The I hate to say the corporate-ish part of our organization.
Although I've seen that part of it. I've seen that part where you haven't seen. I've seen the part where the rank and file hasn't seen. I've been to. I had the chance to play the bagpipes at one of the conferences in Texas, and it was the big hi-ho dads. I mean, it was the lofty atmosphere of our company. From the president and CEOs. That upper tier, and I wish that the rest of our company could see it, because I've described it to some of the our leadership, that I wish that they that our rank and file members could see that, because they don't understand that, and it doesn't translate well from some reason from up here to down here. But the fact was, while I was there, it wasn't about them. everything that they were doing was about the rank and file.
See, that's awesome.
And it was about, and I describe it as like an Amway convention. If you've ever been to an Amway convention, the people are high. They're high on life. They're high on the work and everything that they talked about in that convention, because I got to go to some of those classes that they were, doing. And then the night of that we had this big dinner and stuff that I was there for. It was all about the care and the how can we make the job better for our people, and it had nothing to do with that, with their level. Not how can we increase productivity? How can we
meet
minimize
these metrics?
Yeah, and it was nothing about that. It was how can we care and show our love for our people, and the problem is it just doesn't translate from up here to down here.
Because we have so many talented, good people who do all of these jobs. And occasionally you just need some help. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think you did put it better than I did, in the sense that if I went to my immediate boss and said, man, dude, I need help, he's going to help me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But our big program managers and all of that, I don't even know them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even know them. So you probably worded it a little better. I was trying to get there, but you're right. I think the people who we work with directly would be a lot more, it would be a lot easier to receive a little bit of help and stuff from them.
Mm-hmm. And they're going to know, going to know you.
Exactly.
They know you.
I want to respect your guys' time because we were already kind of over. I want to give just an opportunity if you had anything that you came in wanting to say. We didn't really go over my questions, but the best episodes we have are when we don't get to any of my questions.
I never look at your questions.
In case he doesn't read them anyway. So
yeah, you're kind of right. We got a little off track.
But that's usually how it goes. That's
questions?
The best conversations are when there's not an awkward pause and then I have to ask another question. So I will ask one, and then if you can ignore this question, or if there's anything specific you came in wanting to express to people, feel free to use this opportunity. What advice would you guys give yourselves 5 to 10 years ago? / if there's anything you wanted to say while you were here, use this as that opportunity.
Well, I don't want to go first.
Okay.
Don't look at me.
Well, slow down. Not everything is a sprint. Listen. In this system, we have so many docs and medics and EMTs who have been here for so long. Listen to them. Just pick their brain. Listen to what they say. Slow down, relax, and just listen sometimes. I think a lot of times we get this gung-ho attitude that I don't want to hear that I did that call wrong, or that I missed something, or, slow down and listen to the people around you. Because some of the best times I've ever had were just 5 minutes after giving my report to you, just chatting about, man, I don't know what this is, doc. Well, it could be this, it could be this. Listen to the guy with, 40 years of experience. But also get those new people and take them under your wing. We have this terrible habit sometimes of eating our young.
We do.
And not educating and teaching the young people coming into this, and giving them kind of that burnt out, nasty attitude. Slow down, listen to people, and bring your love of the job to somebody else. That would be probably my best advice, because I didn't always do that.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. And I think I would echo that. The other, I guess, big piece of advice that I would give to myself is remember that you don't have to do everything on your own.
Oh yes, So key.
And that goes in more ways than one, right? It's not, you don't have to do every single procedure yourself. You don't have to do every single bit of the history or the exam, or I mean, obviously repeat your exam and so on and so forth. But the point is that because it's a team sport, you don't have to take on everything yourself. I think that is one of the biggest things that I would tell myself and remind myself along the way.
I think that's key.
I'll make you go last then. I'll go next.
Go right ahead.
I would say, in honor of our good buddy Justin, I would say enjoy the job and enjoy teaching the newbies, because you could make or break, especially EMTs, where, this is kind of their introduction to emergency medicine, and you can absolutely make or break their experience. I would say enjoy teaching the new people. Take the time to actually sit down with them and ask them questions, find out their personality, and help them deal with the difficult calls that you might see, help them learn to start IVs, and just do it with some joy and with some, humor involved, because it can absolutely make or break their day. And I think a lot of us that have been doing this a while know that that's super key. I mean, even our shift together, you took a second to perfect my ultrasound technique, and I was like, with some subtle movements, all of a sudden I've seen the heart better than any ultrasound I've ever done before, with just tiny movements, because I was doing huge movements, and you're like, no, it's just real subtle. And like all of a sudden, like that totally changes how I get ultrasounds. Like little things like that go a long way, I think, and make the new people want to do this job and actually help with burnout. So
I think that what I'd like to say is that, and not something about 5 or 10 years ago, but from when I first started, actually, and I've been talking about this lately to our new people and to some of the students that we get. I really, really wish what I would have done is kept a journal. I really wish I would have kept a journal. I'm writing a book about doing this for as many years as I've been doing it, and it would really help to have that, actually. I've delivered 37 babies in the time that I've been doing this, and I would really like to know how many were boys, how many were girls, how many were breech, because there's been a few of those. How many were really bad. There's a couple that really were. And I can actually remember those pretty well, because they were awful. Right? But I would really like to. I'd really like to be able to go back and think more about this particular call. I remember the first crike that I did, and I remember the particulars of it. But I'm not getting younger, and I think that it. Keeping a journal of every shift might not have been a really eventful shift, but gosh, on May 22nd in 1993, my shift was really pretty dull and boring, and but the shift on the the 13th of May was really active, and I had this many calls and these kind of things, and I really wish that I can't even imagine how many IVs that not just keep the journal, but keep, track of how many things, have a specific page in your journal for, I've done this many IVs, I've done this many intubations, I did this many first pass intubations, this time, I've done this many that has taken me a bit, those kind of things. And I just wish I would have done that.
It's definitely important, because when I was in EMT school, maybe I wouldn't still be here if I didn't have Aaron and Stiffy.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know whose names I can say, but, some of the cool people who I went with, some of the coolest doctors that I've had conversations with. Like, maybe I wouldn't have that if I didn't get that experience right off the bat.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I and what you say is so key. you know, you have a huge responsibility, and you can make or break somebody. And you know, when I did my internship, you know, in Denver years ago, you know, the first two medics that I rode with at Denver General, you know, Scott and Glenn, you know, people that knew back then knew them. They were one of the reasons that I kept going. You know, and they didn't treat me like, you know, it used to be that they would put a piece of tape on the squad bench and say, sit your ass on that X. I don't want to hear anything from you. And Scott and Glenn were not like that.
Yeah.
You know, they were like, let's see what you got, you know.
Or like being Casey's driver. I didn't even have to buy dinner.
Fact.
Casey took all the calls and bought you dinner.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But anyway,
Well-
that's just my advice.
Thanks, guys, for coming on. I appreciate your time. This was a good one.
It was really a good one, I think.
You guys had some awesome stuff to say, so I
Yeah.
really appreciate it, and I'll get you out of here.